So it's the last bank holiday of the year before Christmas. The schools are going back. Autumn is around the corner. Summer is nearly over. But there's no reason to let that get you down, because we, at the Talk of the Trinity podcast, we are still going to be here through the rain, through the sunshine, through the cold depths of winter. So stick with us for all your Villa content to get you through those hard times. Bit of a tenuous link into hard times. Wasn't quite hard times yesterday, Villa Brentford. But with me today, as always, Will Forrest. I'm Baz Barrett. We were both together, but not together, at the game yesterday. Will stuck with the name of the podcast and was in the Trinity. I was in the Holt. So, Will, how was it for you?
Mate, it was nice. It was good to be back, you know. I'll be honest with you, the £8 pints beforehand were a bit expensive, but getting in there, soaking up that atmosphere and seeing the team play again was nice. But what a curveball with that starting lineup. I mean, we alluded to it on the Twitter account before that we'd heard of the rumours about McGinn, Mings and JJ, which had been leaked, but I don't think we really believed it until that the lineup came out, did we?
No, there's always a lot flying around before the game, and you can never quite tell where what has come from. But I think there was a trepidation when the rumours started coming out, and then seeing the starting lineup. I think the heart did sink a little, because it's like, oh, we've lost a couple of players who go straight into the starting 11. Ramsey probably would have played as well if Dean would have gone on our Twitter feed earlier in the week and seen our lineups. Definitely would have followed it.
Yeah.
So, as Smith alluded to after the game, they trained the day before with one team and then having to change it last minute. Evidently not the greatest preparation for the game, especially against Brentford, who, as we touched upon in the preview, one of their strengths is that they are well drilled. They've come up through the trenches together in the Championship promotion season. They don't concede many goals. So, not the ideal preparation, and realistically speaking, both had Villa to win before the game. I would have taken the draw, seeing kind of the last minute shenanigans, if you can put it like that,
yeah.
And it seems to be the way the game panned out, really.
Yeah, you know, I think from looking at that starting lineup and the players playing in some of the positions that they were, and to be honest with you, it was only really Ashley Young who was at a position for us. I'd have taken a draw. I mean, Brentford, they didn't offer a lot though. From what I can remember, Ivan Toney scored his goal, and a very good goal indeed it was. You know, Rico Henry dragged that one shot just wide of the post, and they scored the stupid "let me kick the ball out of your hands" goal past Martinez. And I saw a great tweet earlier where someone had said, why has that been disallowed? If it's because of the rules, then the rules are wrong. Well, no, the rules aren't wrong, because the rules are there to make sure that the right things are enforced, you know. But we had plenty of chances, really, when you think about it. I mean, we had Buendia's goal, we had Twanzabe's header, Ings's close range effort, and then there were the two late Watkins chances and El Ghazi's one that looked a lot closer than it actually was when he cut in from the wing. And there are a few times where Buendia tried to play Ings in, and you could see that the relationships, as Dino likes to call them, are forming, especially Cash and Buendia. I thought they linked up really well down the right.
So I think Buendia, the goal did a world of good. You could see for the confidence, getting it early on in the game. It was a good finish. Took advantage of the defender backing off, which I suppose from a Brentford perspective is going to be the difference between Championship and Premier League football. You lay people off for a second and it's in the back of the net.
Yeah.
But it was, from that perspective, that would be the main positive for me from the match, because you could see he wanted the ball more as the game went on. Now he'd got that goal, he was trying to move the team forward, and he really did have the responsibility of being the main creative player in that team. And the first signs that he is going to thrive in that role, and well, who'll not be overawed by it. And I thought that was positive. Mentioned in terms of Cash, going forward, I think that link was good. Going backwards, Cash, I mean, always, I would say, offers more going forward than going defensively. I think the second half of the season, last season defensively, began to fall off a little bit. A few penalties conceded needlessly, and there are a few moments yesterday where I think he got caught out and could have had more devastating consequences than what they were if Brentford would have been on top of their attacking game. But yeah, I mean, in terms of Ings, that chance, you know, the more I watch it, the more I don't know how it went in. You know, it's great reaction save from the goalie. I think that's all you can say. But even in a game where Ings didn't really get a huge amount of service, I didn't think. Still had an assist, still nearly scored. Is that striker, as we've said previously, just needs a chance or two. You know, he's that predator in the box and demonstrated yesterday, even though he didn't score the goal. And I think overall, solid. I mean, I think second half, Brentford were very happy with a point, and they were time wasting every opportunity they could, really. Yeah. And, you know, we were just unable to rate them down. You mentioned Watkins, it was good to see him get a run out. A couple of chances in injury time, maybe not the clear cut ones where you're thinking, how has he not scored? But maybe in a few weeks with match fitness a bit nearer where he'd want to be, perhaps one of those is going in. So, as you mentioned, chances we had, considering it wasn't a full strength team, didn't play the best, really. Kind of, I think there'd be an admittance that we could play better than what we did. But in the circumstances, with the late changes to the team and players still coming up to match fitness, one of those really, you just got to take the point and move on, in my view. Before the game, Villa full strength team on the paper, pick anybody you like. Would you expect Villa to win the game? Yeah, you probably would, but circumstances, they weren't like that. And I think in terms of main thing is not to lose. And, you know, I mean, sometimes I think it's a case, sometimes you don't get what you deserve in football. I think the draw was the right result. We didn't get what we deserved in terms of 3 players dropping out the team on the day of the game. But I think both teams, obviously Brentford will say that they were the better team and deserve to win because, you know, I think if the away team creates 1 or 2 chances, they automatically think that, you know, you scored 2 goals in an away game, you should be winning. But from a Villa perspective, positive as well in terms of, haven't touched upon it yet, Chukwuemeka playing in centre midfield, full debut, got an hour under his belt. What did you think of his performance?
Do you know, I was having a chat with my neighbour about this earlier, and I appreciate it, none of you were eavesdropping in on that. But we were saying that he didn't set the world alight, and there were a couple of mistakes, but the fans stayed with him all game, and he showed for the ball all the time. He was rolling defenders. He got Ivan Toney booked with that one run. He was trying to make runs off the ball and get through. He looks like a very confident lad, to be fair. And what we've seen of him before, we know that he's confident. Once he gets a gym program and he bulks up just a little bit, maybe speak to the gym blokes at Bayern Munich, because they turn out monsters, don't they, you know. But he did well, especially considering, and I don't know whether it was really noticed, and maybe it was just me overthinking things. First half, it really seemed like we were a 4... I'd say a 4-2-3-1, if you like. Douglas Luiz was definitely that defensive, holding, playmaker, midfielder. Young was very much centre mid, but Chukwuemeka seemed to be more of a cam, seemed to be more of a number 10 behind Danny Ings. Wasn't really getting back into the midfield. It seemed to sort of just have Young and Luiz there. Whereas in the second half, I don't know whether Smith had said something to him, because it was very much more like a 4-1-4-1, if you like, with Chukwuemeka alongside Young, and maybe that stifled him just a little bit, because he seems to be a bit more of a cam to me, but then again he plays centre mid for the under-23s and bosses it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was a slight surprise seeing how high he was on the pitch in the first half based on who was playing alongside him in the centre mid, but maybe there was an element after the Barrow game on Tuesday where he was higher up the field, the thinking of, don't try and make him change his game too much. If he wants to get forward, let him get forward. Yeah. And then at half-time, able to make those adjustments. Maybe the plan was always just to give him an hour. So you got 15 minutes of playing a bit deeper, see how you get on. That experience is going to help you when you have to play again, which, depending on what we do in the transfer window, which is closing in a couple of days, you may think he's going to get more opportunities during the course of the season. So some good touches, some not so good touches. Kept going, as he said, the crowd behind him. The crowd want him to do well, obviously. Kind of academy players always get that extra love, that extra bit of time, and because Villa have invested in the academy over the last few years, and as demonstrated against Barrow on Tuesday, got some youngsters coming through, expectations are high, really. Probably the highest for a batch of players since about the last time we won the Youth Cup, coming up to 20 years ago, considering we won the Youth Cup last season. So that's kind of the level that, those in the club, those outside the club are looking at. So, yeah, solid, no nightmare performance, no lunging red cards, no massive mistakes that led to goals. It was, a solid performance, really. And speaking of solid, had Hendrik Onza captain for the day against his former club. Firstly, what did you think of the decision to make him captain? And what did you think of his performance having to lead that defence in the absence of Tyrone Mings?
I can't say I'm surprised he was captain in Mings' absence, because he was captain against Gina. I can't pronounce the name, so I'm not even going to... Well, I've tried, haven't I? He was captain against them, apparently, even though he didn't have the armband on in the first half. He's a different type of captain to what we've had recently, isn't he, really? He's more of a... He's similar to James Chester, I think, in regards to most recent captains, in the fact that he tries to lead by example with what he does on the pitch. You don't see or hear him barking out orders or organising the defence. He very much leaves that to Emi Martinez and Tyrone Mings. Tyrone Mings is your atypical captain, really, with his leadership skills. The only other person I thought would have been Martinez, because of what he's achieved as a player recently over the last year or so, really, with the multiple cup wins at Arsenal and also the Copa America. There were a few other people who you potentially could have put the armband on as well, like Ashley Young, but then again, with him playing in a different position, you may have thought, no, we'll leave him off that, and he's also going to have to help Chukwuemeka through the game and support May Target at left back. But I thought Conser did well. Him and Twanzebe in particular had very solid games, and I don't really remember either of them doing anything wrong. And I always remember my granddad saying to me, if you don't remember a player on the pitch, it's a good thing, because they haven't made a mistake.
Yeah, I'd say about Twanzebe, he looked good on the ball.
Yeah.
I'd say he looked solid in the back. I mean, he's not afraid to go in for a challenge in the air or on the ground, really. Gives away a few free kicks, which, if you've been a physical centre-half, is to be expected.
Yep.
And considering a late addition into the team, perfectly solid. As you said, no real clangers dropped there, and it's brought in really to be cover, you'd think. And he came in and covered. So.
Yeah. I mean, surprising, though, in many ways, that he came in instead of Courtney House, because Dino's made it very public that he likes a right-footed and a left-footed centre-back.
Yeah, and that is the traditional combo. And I suppose it'd be interesting to see what Courtney Howes thought when he saw the team sheet. Probably expecting a game and a realisation perhaps that he's slipped at least fourth in the pecking order now. And it's always a dangerous one in terms of your third choice, Twanzebe. He's only in on loan. I mean, there's no indication that there's a option to buy, for example, for a certain fee. So you could end up in a scenario whereby Twanzebe goes back to United again at the end of the season and Howes decides he wants to leave and we take the money, potentially, and then you end up in a situation where you've only got two centre-backs at the club. So we touched briefly on the right-hand side. We're going to switch to the left now, like a perfectly placed cross-field pass. So we had Target at left-back and El Ghazi left-wing. How do you think they did?
I thought they did well. I think, you look back at that Watford game and you realise that actually Target wasn't fully fit because he didn't have a full pre-season as everybody else did. He looked a little bit sluggish against Watford. But how much support did he get from Ashley Young to start with? And then it felt, though, that he had the support against Brentford, that El Ghazi was getting back. El Ghazi was trying to occupy Christopher Azure as well, a little bit higher up the pitch where he could. But he tracked back to get the dirty dive in number 7, and Ashley Young also offered support there. And with Douglas Luiz in CDM, he did so. Target, for me, Target played a good game, He's a 7 out of 10 for that game. I don't think you could give him anything less because what did he do wrong that was massively costly at all? But what else did he do? He obviously needs to form new relationships with whoever's left wing because him and Grealish were fantastic at times linking up last season. So dependent on whoever that left wing is going to be, Target just needs to get used to playing with him. And El Ghazi gets a lot of stick. He gets a lot of stick, but, he's a big game player for us. He tends to pop up and get goals when we need them. Everton at home, the first Premier League win back. Most importantly, the playoff final opening goal.
Yep.
Scored and put us ahead against Forest when we drew 5-5 with them on that crazy night. But he scored a lot of other important goals. Everton away last season to beat them 2-1. Just some of the ones I can remember, and countless penalties. Wolves away in the last minute, Newcastle the other week.
100% record.
Yeah, he gets a lot of stick, but he is a great squad player for us. And 15 million, I think someone's having a giraffe if they think that he's only worth that much. I'd add another 5 or 10 onto it personally.
I think his performance against Barrow, the highlights reel, that'll get us a bit more. In terms of target, I think he was targeted in the first half. I think Brentford's game plan, probably when they thought the team was going to be something else, was clearly to go and attack our left-hand side. And you could say that was where the first goal came from or initiated from.
Yeah.
I think he weathered the storm as the game went on, and especially as Brentford kind of didn't appear to be quite as gung-ho to try and get the win in the second half. He was able to settle down and be a bit solid, which is, I think, was what he needs. As you said, fitness isn't quite there. Needs to get some minutes under the belt, and he hasn't got that link with Grealish, which was a big positive, as you said, of him being in the team. Trying to sort that out with El Ghazi. I thought El Ghazi tried hard, solid game.
Yeah.
Couple of nice kind of positions. Didn't quite get the finishing products in the end, but as you said, a solid player, somebody who you need in the squad in the Premier League if you're looking to be where Villa are realistically. Yeah, I wouldn't be looking to usher him towards the exit door for whatever you can get for him, which appeared to be the situation during the first half of last season. There appeared to be real strong rumours that he was out the door, but he stayed for his place in the team, and underrated in the sense he scores more goals than I think people give him credit for.
Yeah.
And I think he's got more of a work ethic than I think he gets credit for.
I think, you just thinking back as well now, both of those players had a hand in that first goal. It was Target's through ball that when he spotted Danny Ings run. Ings with a 1-2 with El Ghazi to lay it off for Buendia. So, as bad as some people think those two are, they had a big hand yesterday in us getting a point.
Yeah, and we've touched upon pretty much every single player now, some more in depth than others. So, wrapping that segment up, who would you say your man of the match was?
Without doubt, it was Emi Buendia. Just for the, he put in the most tackles yesterday out of any of the players on that pitch and won the most. I think it was 4 I saw earlier, which doesn't seem like a massive amount, but Buendia offers something defensively as well. He gets back and helps out. And I remember last week against Newcastle seeing little clips on Match of the Day afterwards, and he was getting back and he was playing nice little passes to get out of our penalty box as well. Scored a beauty of a goal. Absolutely loved it as well. And his interview on BBC Football was really refreshing, where he said, I want that number 10 shirt. I want to show that there's life after Jack Grealish. I'm here to be a Villa superstar, basically. And so I'd go for him. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are a few other candidates. I think Douglas Luiz played very well. He showed that he can play that position brilliantly. That deeper one. He was probably at his best in the first 10 or 15 minutes, and then just sort of moulded into the rest of the game as the other players came into it. I think he potentially shows that we don't need a holding midfielder if that's what we're going to play. Apart from those two, I thought Ashley Young played quite well considering he was playing central midfield, which is a position he's not used to, and he was supporting the likes of Chukwuemeka and Target and helping them through the game. He led really well. He led by example.
I suppose his experience was a definite plus point, because you would have thought that selection would have been influenced by the fact of having somebody with an experienced head playing alongside somebody making their full Premier League debut in centre midfield.
I think thinking about it as well, to think of like a Chukwuemeka, the fact that Dino has put him in ahead of Harahan and Nakamba, who are both two established Premier League midfielders. They're definitely established Villa players, and the same with Young in centre midfield. It goes to show just how much confidence he's got in Chukwuemeka and also in everything that Young's going to bring experience-wise.
Do you think that was the right decision?
Yeah, I think, Nakamba coming in would have been a holding midfielder and Luiz would have had to have played as an 8, but Luiz played well in that holding role last week, so why move him from there? Nakamba, whilst he's got a lot of energy, I don't think he's going to offer too much going forward. I think he's only ever had one shot for us, and that went quite wide and hit a steward. Yep. Harahan is a lovely, neat and tidy player, and he potentially could have played alongside Chukwuemeka. His through ball for the first goal against Barrow was delicious, but how much of an impact is he going to have in the Premier League, except for free kicks against Newcastle or other set pieces?
Yeah, we missed that boat last week.
Yeah.
In terms of getting him on the field. He's gone for the season. What I would say in terms of that is, if the view of the coaching staff is that Chukwuemeka's ceiling is higher than Hurahan's, Nakamba's, and if there's a feeling that if somebody came in with a bit of money for Hurahan or Nakamba, we would take it, then I think that was the right decision, because, in terms of the old cliche, if you're good enough, you're old enough, and if they think he's good enough, then get him on the field. I'd agree in terms of Nakamba. If Luiz is going to play that more defensive role, Nakamba's Luiz's backup, in terms of if they're both,
yep.
Even though it was for the last half hour yesterday, Nakamba came on and they were both in the same defensive midfield. Luiz goes slightly further forward, but yeah, I think they're fighting for the same place in the team. And Hourihane, as you said, neat and tidy player, has his moments, solid pro. Obviously did very well on loan second half of last season at Swansea. You still think he'd really make a impact in the Championship. He'd walk straight into most people's starting 11s, I would suspect.
Yep.
But if you're not getting in the Villa team last year, it would have been a backward step. I mean, we played Young in centre midfield. I think there perhaps would have been more of a call to play Hourihane over Young than Hourihane over Chukwuemeka. But yeah, if your feeling is those are the two choices really of who's going to play that role, I think it was the right call in that sense looking forward. And whether that would have been the same if we were playing Man City away, maybe we would have played a different team. But I think Brentford at home, it's the right type of game if there is one in the Premier League to try that selection and see how it goes. And mentioning Dean Smith there and some of the decisions that he's made, and we've been quite positive in terms of the decision so far. There's been a bit of talk on some of the Twitter channels in respect of Dean Smith and his position and people's thoughts, and some of it's been quite negative. What have you been thinking about that? What have you been seeing?
I think they're jokers and they need to get in the bin, really, to be honest with you. To put it bluntly, when Dino came, I liked what he was doing at Brentford. I remember when he got hotter to bag a hat-trick against us, away at Griffin Park, and he was a good manager at that time. He's come to us. He's had a couple of struggles at the club. There was that period when Grealish got injured in the Championship, and also the period last year again when Grealish was injured. And the first season, we struggled quite a bit. There were times where he didn't really seem to have a plan B and that. But the thing I like about Dino is he learns all the time. When Grealish came back in the Championship, he learned. He gave him the captaincy. He told him to fire us to the Premier League, and he did. He learned after lockdown with the defending, really focused on that, helped bed Douglas Luiz and a couple of the other players into the side more. And he always talks about that 3-year plan, doesn't he, that he's got, where the first season's about survival, the second season is about something or other, and then the third season is about getting players in to build your squad up more. And it seems to be working. He can't take credit for all of the signings. We know that that's Mr. Langer, really, and his team of football manager experts or whatever they are. But I trust Dino. I think that things will only get better under him. And touch wood, I don't see him leaving anytime soon. I think we improve on last season. I think we get at least 10th this year, and I'd be happy with improvement.
I'd say in terms of, if you're looking at it on a pure numbers perspective, predictions for the first 3 games of the season, where you thought we would be. We probably are a couple of points behind what the expectations were. I mean, as we've touched upon, there's circumstances, quite big circumstances, which certainly you can deal with the Brentford game. Your full strength team situation perhaps would have been different. Another win, 2 home wins out of 3, or 2 wins out of 3, then yeah, things looks a lot rosier. I think 3 games in with all the stuff going on, too early, I think, to be saying he doesn't know what he's doing, get him out. And I think in terms of what I say with Smith, it's not necessarily whether he needs to be in or out. I think I agree with you. I wouldn't even be questioning whether he should still be manager. I think the bigger concern, if you can call it a concern, is getting people in around him on the coaching staff, because you mentioned in terms of the defence improving in that first season back after lockdown. I think you'd have to probably assume John Terry has to take a lot of credit for that. Obviously we had O'Kelly, who'd been with Smith for a long time as his trusted assistant. He's no longer with us. They're two really big roles in that backroom team, and I get an impression Smith isn't a dictatorial type manager, as in I tell you what to do and I'm not listening to everybody else. It seems quite a collaborative, consultative approach, bringing in Craig Shakespeare to have another voice. That's where I think there's a little bit of worry on that side of the white line, as it were, in the dugout. I think we need to be getting some. We demonstrated with Terry, you don't necessarily need an experienced coach, and you had that nice balance with obviously Kelly, who is the epitome of an experienced coach. So we've been talking on the Twitter page, running polls about which former player you'd have back as a coach. That mixture of the two, I think we need to try the same thing again in terms of getting a young, hungry, up-and-coming coach, somebody a bit more experienced, building that team around Smith. I think that's my bigger concern than Smith in charge of the management. I mean, evidently, they may blend into each other if the situation isn't addressed in the short, medium term. You'd think an international break might be a good opportunity, even though not necessarily to get on the training field, because our players a lot of them are going to be on international duty, so you can't get them in. But those kind of backroom deals, kind of getting that staff, I'd hope progress will be made in the next couple of weeks. We've got some tough games coming up. I think we could use a bit more help in that regard, but I think to blame Smith for all of it. And you talked about his improvement as a coach. I mean, that's what you want, really. I mean, in terms of, you want a coach who is going to learn from his mistakes and progress and improve, and you feel that the team is progressing and improving with him. I mean, in terms of 11th last season, technically 10th is an improvement. I think in a preview thought would be roughly the same again, in terms of could be 11th, could be 10th. I don't think we'll be challenging for Europe, to be perfectly honest. But it's a team whereby the most expensive English player in history has been torn out of the team. And whoever you are as a manager, it's not going to be a snap of the fingers job to get back to where you were. And especially, I think it was oversimplified a bit in the second half of last season. Grealish doesn't play, we lose. But it was clear that if you have somebody that good, it is going to make a difference if they're not in your team. So I think it's a little early, a lot early, I'd say, to be criticising Dean Smith. Obviously, every decision he makes isn't going to be perfect. But, in terms of somebody with the long-term interests of the club at heart, I'd struggle to think of anybody else off the top of my head at this time. And I think especially, you mentioned the relationship between him and Grealish, Villa through and through. Evidently, the lure of Champions League saw for Grealish.
Yes.
In terms of teams above Villa, I don't think there's too many natural fits for Smith in terms of who's going to come calling. So we got the opportunity to really build something with Smith. He's been in charge, coming up for just over 3 years now. Many managers don't last that long. So, we're talking about, another couple of years, could really be to the benefit of the club. So, the start to the season, you look at the fixtures before they came out, probably one of the gentler starts we could have had. Hasn't gone as well as what you'd hope, but I think it's premature to say the least. Could be worse. Could be Arsenal, I'd say.
Well, you highlight brilliantly there the fact that we have lost those two key backroom members of staff, and we've got a lot of injuries as well. I think it's something like 9 players who realistically could get into the starting team. If you think you've got Tyrone Mings, I'm trying to do this on squad number order just so I remember them all, but you've got Mings, you've got McGinn, you've got Sanson, you've got, and we haven't seen a lot of Sanson, but he's out injured, and I think he would be getting a chance. There's a lot of buzz about him. You've got JJ out, you've got Traore, Trezeguet, Bailey, you've had Watkins out injured as well, and you've got Davis, who potentially could get into the first team. That's 9 right there. Added to the fact that you've got O'Kelly and Terry both leaving, and both of them leaving not at ideal times for us, really, with them being just before the start of the season. The international break maybe comes at a good time after having these few games, letting them bed together. We don't know how convenient it will be if Buendia decides to jet off to Argentina. But, otherwise it helps him gel with the squad. And same with Bailey, if he decides to go out to Jamaica if he's fit enough. Hopefully we get an assistant or two in. And looking at it, and the 4 people or ex-players I put onto the Twitter page were Melberg, Larson, Petrov and Boomer, because I believe that at least all of them have had some sort of coaching experience. Who would you bring one of those in because of their Villa links and their love for the team? Or would you look at somebody different, real left field suggestion, and you're probably going to laugh and fall off your chair. And if he does, you'll hear a bang and I called 999, I promise. Someone like a Sol Campbell, defensive. He hasn't done too bad in management. I mean, it's a lot better than a suggestion of somebody with a load of managerial experience because he clicks his finger and always gets interviewed for jobs in Dwight York, obviously tongue-in-cheek with all of that. Sol Campbell, great defender as well, Would you look at someone like him, or is there anybody else who's maybe out of work, a younger coach, a Jonathan Woodgate, someone like that, who you bring in?
I don't think Campbell's a bad shout. I mean, the only thing that might scupper that is he wants to be back in management, but realistically speaking, a whole different debate in terms of the opportunities at management level he's got compared to Frank Lampard, for example. So maybe a stint coaching may get him further up the league ladder. I mean, in terms of we could sell it to him, like a 2-year project maybe, in terms of getting that experience at Premier League level, which would only help him, whether that's another job in the UK or overseas. I would have a look at somebody more experienced as well. But I think in terms of, obviously it's nice to have a former Villa player, in terms of the romance of it, but no, I wouldn't limit it to it. I mean, I think in terms of, obviously we mentioned John Terry, probably one of the most, if not the player who got abused the most at a Villa game that I've ever been at was John Terry. Yeah. And I remember it was like 5 minutes, one particular game where he was down injured, and it was pure vitriol coming in from the hole. He comes back and, he's coached and, plays for us and, does a very good job. So, I think we do need to look, a little beyond, kind of what may be obvious candidates. I hope we don't venture too far into the Sky pundit arena. I probably wouldn't be
You don't want Joni and Lescott then?
Well, at least I wouldn't have to worry about not beating the traffic, I suppose, on the way back. I'd always, be able to jet off before the end of a game. But no, I mean, I think they're issues to be addressed in the coaching staff. But, there was something quite nice about the Brentford game yesterday, I thought. Football, haven't been able to go to a game for a long time. First time at Villa Park for both of us, coming up for 18 months. All that excitement in the crowd was, up for it to begin with. Fairly average game at the end of the day. And that is most games of football kind of most of the time. So there was something quite nice kind of in terms of, not every game is going to be brilliant. Not every game's terrible. Yeah. Sometimes you take your point and you move on. I
think definitely, I agree. And going back to nice things from yesterday and really maybe linking the coaching and the niceness up like a Douglas Luiz through ball. Whether many people spotted it, JPB was meant to come on. He was ready to come on for the last couple of minutes. Obviously, Conser went down injured and Courtney House came on. Craig Shakespeare was fantastic from what I could see from where I was, or at least he looked to be being really nice to JPB, putting his arm around him, explaining that he wouldn't be coming on anymore and just trying to make him feel a little bit better about the whole situation. That's how it appeared. So full credit to him because I think he's been a catalyst in how we've improved as well. Great choice from Dino to get him in on the coaching staff. So there's a lot of faith there. A couple of other ex-villains just to throw in while I think about it. Mark Delaney and George Boateng, both of them are coaching in younger age groups at the Villa at the moment, and maybe having one of them with the first team would help a bit with the transition of some of those younger players who they're in and around on a daily basis, or have been, when they make it up into the first team. And you're probably feeling a little bit nervous at first, you know, training alongside Tyrone Mings, Emi Martinez, Konsa, Ashley Young, those sort of people. You may even be in a bit of awe if you're a Louis Barry and you're training with some of your heroes. But maybe one of those two are potentially worth a punt or a trial, at least until the end of the season.
Yeah, I don't think Delaney's a bad shout. Obviously, coaching you under 23s, coaching experience when we played Liverpool in the FA Cup. As you said, that continuity as well. So there is, especially as we've already touched upon, getting the youth into the first team is a big focus of the club. So somebody who's been there in terms of that process, I think that would be a good shout. Yeah. Well,
we'll leave it to Dino and Johan. I imagine that Johan Langer has got some sort of database as well on which coaches are the best ones to bring in. He's probably got databases on which tea ladies or tea men make the best cups of tea and bring the best biscuits, you know. You've got Jamie Dodger on there, you're at the top of his list.
It's all about those 1%. And, you know, those Jamie Dodgers could be making all the difference. And I look forward to the end of the season. The FA Cup has been paraded around Wembley. Asking Dino what made the difference. Just brings out a little pack of half-eaten jammies. Just goes, this is it. This is what I did at half-time.
Yeah, man.
And speaking of half-time, we're probably about halfway through this podcast, but stay tuned with us for the second half when we're going down memory lane. We're going to be talking about who is going to make right back in our position.
We'll be right back at you.
So moving on then, and the next in our Ultimate Villa 11 series has reached the right back stage. And previous episodes, if you have been listening or you haven't been listening, we've picked the goalie, we've picked the two centre-backs. Two centre-backs we put out after the last episode. We thought there'd be a little bit of controversy, thought it might split opinion. It did split opinion. The difference was 1% in the final vote between Mellberg and Larsson to accompany God in the centre of defence. Mellberg won. I was a little surprised by that, but evidently people in the Villa fan base have as fond a memory of Mellberg as we do.
Yeah, definitely. I think it comes down to what we said, the fact that unfortunately Larsson, we didn't get to see as much of him as we would have liked. You know, he was a great leader, great Villa captain, scored in that European win against Ajax, but unfortunately he didn't do quite enough to make our ultimate team. Maybe he gets a place on the bench now that we're allowed 9 subs. He probably would, even if we're only allowed 3, to be honest with you. The only difference so far is that Villa fans on Twitter have chosen Emi Martinez, great goalkeeper. We've mentioned that, you know, give it 2 seasons, he probably will be the greatest Villa goalkeeper of the last 30 years, but we went for Bozzy.
We did, so 2 out of 3 ain't bad, as the singer formerly known and currently known as Meatloaf once said. So if this is sounding confusing to you, what are we talking about? Just a brief run through of what we've been doing in this segment. We're going through Villa in the Premier League. We split it into 3 decades roughly. 92 to 2002, 2001-2002 season, 2002 to the 2011-2012 season, and then 2012-2013 to the present day. We've split it into 1 pick. We had 2 picks for the centre-backs because there were plenty of them. Yep. For each of the decades, then we pick our player to go in that particular position, and then we put the finalists on to the Twitter page for your vote. not really very many rules in terms of who we can pick, who we can't pick. We're not including loan players. So you have to have permanently played for Villa in order to qualify for consideration for our team. We do throw a few loan players in, for honourable mentions when we're going back through the history. That's about it, really, in terms of rules.
Yeah, we're also obviously including those 3 years that we had in the Championship. One player I'm surprised we didn't mention last time, David Unsworth was a villain for all the 3 days while his missus was cooking him fish finger sandwiches, What a great thing it was that he only stuck around for 3 days, because we wouldn't have Gareth Barry, potentially, without him. Whoever the gaffer was at the time, John Gregory, wasn't it? He wanted a left-footed, left-sided centre-back. David Unsworth left, and then Gareth Barry got promoted to the team.
Well, we hope that the fish finger sandwiches were worth it. He would probably say they were, but, we'll see whether Unsworth, spoiler alert if you haven't listened to the previous podcast, didn't make our team. Is that going to allow Barry in? But we will discuss that later on, and I suppose there will be, more Barry discussion as regards where, formation-wise, in the team, he may qualify for, because he qualifies for a few places. We didn't consider him for left-back. We're not going to consider him for right-back, spoiler alert, but, that's not the last time Barry's name is going to pop up in our discussions. Moving on to players we are going to discuss this week in the right-back race. We're going to start in the 90s, early 2000s. We get initially one choice each, unless we pick the same one. Then it becomes a shorter segment, but we're going to throw in a few honourable mentions as well. So my kind of feeling going through the names myself was there were a few kind of standouts, but the competition was a lot less numeric in terms of, the centre-backs, we had plenty we could throw in there. Wasn't so much in terms of the right-backs in comparison. I mean, there's certainly a few more right-backs than left-backs, which we'll come on to in our next episode. But in terms of 90s right-backs, who caught your eye? Who's your 90s candidate?
To be honest with you, with 90s right-backs, there weren't that many, were there, really? Well, I say there weren't that many. There are a few, and I think you forget about them. Candidate-wise, Mark Delaney, 9 years at the Villa, 9 injury-plagued years at the Villa, really, and it took him a little bit of time to get into the team after he initially joined us from Cardiff. But he was a mainstay for quite a long time, and he's obviously still there now. Scored... Well, he didn't score many goals for us. I remember he scored the last time we beat Watford at Vicarage Road. A lovely volley from the edge of the box. Apart from him, Apart from him, you're probably looking at an Earl Barrett, maybe, from when we first started in the Premier League, though I don't really remember Earl Barrett, if I'm being completely honest with you. I can remember us signing Simon Grayson from Leicester. I remember he scored against West Brom in a 4-0 FA Cup win. We had a couple of other people like Steve Watson, didn't we? And Fernando Nelson. But I think Mark Delaney's the standout for me, really.
I think Delaney could potentially cause some controversy with the selection criteria, because I say you could arguably have him in the 2000s as well.
I agree.
I think in terms of, see, the 90s, there was the cup final team. Mm-hmm. So that is a nice bookend in terms of his, you could arguably say, most successful season playing for Villa. So we only have a situation where very rarely arises where we have to bring in new rules as we go along. And one of them we did discuss before we started the segment, in case of emergency break here, is we're going to say a player could only be considered for one of the decades, 90s or the 2000s. So let's dig a bit deeper into Delaney, because, as you said, there's not many candidates in the 90s. There's a couple more, which we'll come on to, but it could be make or break in terms of Delaney's prospects getting in the team.
Okay.
As you said, he joins from Cardiff. Only really didn't even play a full season for Cardiff. Came midway through the 98-99 season, plays a couple of games. 99-2000, mentioned the cup final season, 28 games in the Premier League, 5 in the FA Cup, 3 in the League Cup, overall 36 appearances, 1 goal. 2000-2001, 19 appearances in the Premier League in total, couple of cup games, dotted around there. 2001-2002, 30 games in the league, few cup games going on. Then in terms of where we break, that's where it goes into the 2000s. 2002-2003, I think the injuries beginning to come. 12 games in the league, few cup games. 2003-2004, 25 games in the league.
Decent amount, to be fair.
2004-2005, equal most appearances in his Villa career in the league, plays 30 in the league. 2005-2006, 12 in the league. So in terms of number of seasons, 4 for the 2000s, 3 for the 90s. In terms of number of appearances, if you could see this being filmed, you'd be able to see the mental arithmetic running through my head right now in terms of trying to calculate these numbers.
No, it's definitely that second period, isn't it? Quite easily.
It's closer than you think, actually. In terms of league appearances, we'll just stick with league. 30-28-19. Mass fans tell me that's 77.
Okay.
League for the 2000s. 30-25-12-12. 79. So it's close.
Okay.
In terms of that, 2 injury hit seasons in the 2000s, 2 fuller seasons in the 2000s as well, as opposed to 2 fuller seasons in the 90s. So I think the only way to break this as a tie is, what is your one ultimate Mark Delaney moment?
Watford away, goal, volley. I was there with my granddad. Remember it? He was about the 24th minute, though. I think he was number 24 for us. That's why I might be remembering it at that time. That's what I remember about him. I also remember him in that. The main Villa shirt I remember Mark Delaney in is the cup final shirt, that claret and blue striped shirt. Don't know, what about you?
Well, the criteria that I'm just saying right now would be which side that falls. And that goal for Delaney you mentioned against Watford, 24th of August 1999, Watford 0, Villa 1. Let's put him in the 90s.
Okay.
Let's have that tiebreaker criteria, because he did do things in the 2000s era, mainly the first season under David O'Leary. I remember there was one game where we thought the ball was out and he's managed to hook it back in and got the goal. On the basis I can't remember what that goal was, and you can remember your Watford. Let's have that as a tiebreaker.
Okay.
So Delaney, your pick going in to 90s consideration. In terms of you can throw in as an alternative, there's not really too many. I mean, in terms of, you mentioned a few. Earl Barrett plays the first couple of seasons for Villa, goes to Everton. They win the FA Cup, kind of when he goes. So that's your early one. You got Gary Charles, who was next, played a couple of seasons, a few injury hit moments when he was injured. Who comes in? Fernando Nelson.
Yeah.
He plays. I like Fernando Nelson.
I like Fernando Nelson.
It's like he came, he saw, kind of conquered, went home, basically.
I remember I liked him. He was number 15, wasn't he, Fernando Nelson? And I can remember him running rampant down the right wing against Tottenham when we beat them 4-1 on Boxing Day the one year, when Staunton was meant to take a free kick and Colin Moore ran up and snidely had it type of thing. I'm sure that was the game. But yeah, I liked... They were very much wing-backs, weren't they, those two? But still very much right-sided defenders. Yeah, I don't know who else you're thinking.
That was it, kind of in terms of fullbacks. I mean, you mentioned Steve Watson. He was quite a bit of money, kind of late 90s, 4 million for a right back. He was solid, I think, for Villa. But yeah, there were not too many, because especially a theme that comes into more spoiler alert when we talk about left backs, once you get a run in the team as a fullback in the Villa team, you're generally set for, until you get injured or, lose form, get sold. So you usually get yourself a bit of time. But now we've had the Delaney tiebreaker, which, I think that's a whole concept in itself, the Delaney tiebreaker. Now he's managed to come on the right side of that. I would agree with you. I'd have him as my 90s selection for right back.
Steve Watson, with him, the very first thing I can remember about him is that we signed him, obviously, because he played for us. And I remember looking on teletext at my dad's, and we were losing, I think it was 4-0 to Chelsea. And this is only a few days after remembering he'd signed and talking about him and what a good signing he was. And I looked at the teams, and I went to my dad, who the hell is Watson? Forgot who he was instantly. And then it took about 10 minutes to realise it was Steve Watson who we'd signed, and by that point we were getting smashed.
No. It was also the alternative draft of the first Sherlock Holmes novel. But a mystery for the 2000s moving on, which probably would perplex Sherlock Holmes, would be to name, now we've taken Delaney out of the picture, more than about 2 people who played right back in the 2000s, let alone ones who can...
Your favourite Villa player ever.
Well,
la, 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 la.
Well, I mean, in terms of good players, I should probably clarify. We've taken Delaney out. I mean, honourable mention Kyle Walker when he was on loan, so he doesn't qualify for consideration, but he was probably the best part of a team that was beginning to go downhill.
Scored on his debut in the cup against Sheffield United, didn't they? Refused to celebrate against them.
Yeah, it's, sign of the guy. And, to be fair, I don't think he gets asked too much about his time at Villa, but even trying to put aside my bias hat on, I think that half a season at Villa in the Premier League, in a struggling team, he goes away, gets in the Spurs team, playing for Man City now, playing for England at the highest level. Yeah. I do think that was a good learning ground for him, even though I'm not imagining he's going to come back when he's winding down his career. No. You never know. But yeah, I remember him putting in some good performances. We scrubbed Delaney. I was scrambling around for alternatives. Could say maybe Aaron Hughes, probably played right back maybe a couple of times, but you're struggling. But for the 2000s, and I think this is going to work out well for your favour, there's only really one candidate for the 2000s if you're taking Delaney out for who can play right back. And that's your favourite, Luke Young.
Oh, mate, I love Luke Young. Absolute beauty. I don't know why I liked him either. You just have those favourites and you don't know. A bit like you with Ulysses Dela Cruz. You just have those.
Yeah, you don't know why you just have these strong emotional feelings about somebody. You just do.
I loved Luke Young. I remember when we signed him, I was quite excited about it. He'd been doing well for Charlton at the time. He was getting into the England team around that time as well, I think, if I remember rightly. And he came and he joined us. He scored a winner against Everton, which probably made me really love him even more. Quite versatile. I felt he was quite unfairly treated at one point under O'Neill, but he managed to get back into the squad again, and he was definitely one of the best right backs I've seen down the Villa. He was in a successful team as well under O'Neill. 3 years, he didn't feature an awful lot for us, I don't think, after that first season. But yeah, I like Luke Young. I don't know who you're thinking. Are you thinking Luke Young as well? I mean,
I think for right backs, he's there by default. I think in those 2000s, he was at Villa for, looking at the numbers, for a lot less time than what you'd think. He only played 3 full seasons, one of which he only played 16 games in the league. As you said, his first season was the one where he plays the most games, 34 in the Premier League. He got shunted off to QPR at the start of the 2011-2012 season, which there was chaos kind of at QPR in that period. The more remarkable thing is that QPR actually stayed up that season, which I've found hard to believe.
It was just baffling when they loaned him out, I think, at the time, because you bring in Habib Bey.
there was
Around that
some all
time.
sorts kind of going on, you know.
I mean, you said we brought in Habib Bey. Eric Lehigh was around that time, as was Aaron Hughes, who you said. Alan Hutton joined at the end of that period, and I don't think anybody was very impressed that we got Alan Hutton in.
Yeah, I think he technically falls into the next one in terms of games.
Definitely, yeah, I completely agree. We're not going to have a Mark Delaney tiebreaker for that one.
Which is good, because the next 10 minutes are about Alan Hutton. Spoiler alert.
There was obviously Ulysses De La Cruz, who joined from Hibs, very slow player. His most memorable thing was scoring against Charlton on one of his first games when we beat him 2-0. I think Stephen Moore got the other goal in that game. And Rob Edwards, who was only really there for one season, looked quite decent, lobbed Carlo Cudicini in front of the Holt end and hit the crossbar, and then disappeared down the road to Wolverhampton.
Yeah, certainly making himself well known now as a manager, you know, in terms of currently manager of Forest Green. You know, he was coaching the England youth setup. So I don't know if he quite goes far to say that hitting the bar was the best thing that happened to him rather than going in. Could have got him running the Villa team. But certainly a player...
It helped.
Yeah, it was like, that's why Young comes in. But certainly, you know, in terms of the coaching career, certainly want to keep an eye on. And, you know, obviously we're talking in the first half of the podcast about coaches who could come in. Don't think he's leaving Forest Green as manager, but yeah, kind of a couple of years ago, you know, would have been somebody who we could have considered maybe, but yeah, fair play to him, you know, in terms of how he's managed to get over that cruel blow of 6 inches away from glory. I mean, if it was part of, you know, the bomb squad who were practicing just trying to hit the crossbar challenge, maybe things could have been very different. But, you know, he did have a decent club career in terms of played over 200 games in the league for various clubs. He was part of the Blackpool squad that got promoted to the Premier League. I mean, he only played twice in the Premier League. But, yeah, I mean, you say in terms of a Premier League youth academy, it's not necessarily, although, you know, it's the dream to have players coming into your own team, but to get players to have a decent pro career, did the job.
Definitely. Yeah, I agree. And I think that's something that has been touched upon by the Villa coaches in regards to wanting players who come through to make a career in football, not necessarily at Aston Villa, as nice as that would be, you know, for everybody to have that Gabby Agbonlahor moment of playing for your team, but to play professional football for someone. But yeah, I don't think anybody comes close to Luke Young, really, apart from Mark Delaney, but we've already put him into the...
Yeah, we managed to get them both into the final reckoning. So the 2000s, slim pickings. Moving on to the 2010s now to the present day. Slightly more to choose from, but it's going to be, you know, it isn't a Hall of Fame position really, but somebody who may go down in the, you know, maybe the cult hero Villa 11, perhaps, if not necessarily the ultimate 11, mainly because of the way, I'd say, he came back from adversity. Is the aforementioned Alan Hutton. I mean, he came in as one of McLeish's signings, played a lot in that first season. Wasn't a great season, really. I think he suffered a little by association with that because Lambert comes in, rarely gets a game, really. He's on loan various places. Forest, I think he's at loan for a bit. I think he goes to Mallorca, doesn't he?
Yeah, he did,
for a bit. So you're kind of thinking the end of his contract, he's gone, but manages to claw himself back into the team, into consideration. And I think really in terms of where he'll be more fondly remembered by Villa fans, I'd suggest, it's probably his time in the Championship, really. When the team, comparatively speaking, wasn't doing particularly well for most of the time, he was a solid professional. I think it's the type of fullback you need in the Championship, to be honest. And who can forget his great goal against Blues?
Wow. Yeah, and quite funny really with Alan Hutton. His best performances were probably a left back for us, because he spent quite a bit of time there, didn't he? And he scored 2 cracking goals in that season, because he scored the goal where he went on a long run against Hull on the opening day when we beat them 3-1. But then again, his cult hero status comes from that goal against Blues and from coming back from, the bomb squad. And there was the iconic commentary when he scored against the Blues where it said the whole tender are on their feet for the man they called a Scottish Cafu.
Yep.
He, maybe he's a bit of a player who young kids should look up to in regards to, what times may be hard sometimes. You may not always be starting, but if you try hard, you'll get back into it. I think a lot of people would say that his best years were at Rangers, maybe before he joined Spurs, but there's definitely a case to say that he did better at Villa. The fans loved him in the end when he came in, and the sort of full-blooded tackles he put in, the time that he absolutely destroyed Saido Berahino's testicles with a kick. Apart from right backs throughout this aren't great. They're slim pickings, I'm going to throw one in there now, and even saying it, I feel a little bit weird. Ahmed El Mohammadi, you look at him and he was in the team, and when we signed him, you thought, why are we signing this middle-of-the-road player, Steve Bruce player? He did well for us. He always tried hard. He wasn't the best player at all. He was part of that Championship promotion team, helped stabilise us there, put in the beautiful cross for El Ghazi to score against Derby in the playoff final. And he played a lot of games in that first season back up, scored an important equaliser against Newcastle when we thought, why on earth are they bringing El Mohammadi on? Oh, he scored. Yeah.
It was his assist for Trezeguet, wasn't it, for the goal against Leicester in the second leg?
Yeah.
Semi-final.
He helped Trezeguet settle a lot as well, didn't he, in the team, really. A few honourable mentions as well during this time. Matty Cash has done quite well since he's joined us, considering he came from the Championship and was predominantly a winger up until the season before he joined us. He's done well. He's definitely a fan favourite, I think. Frederick Gilbert is a fan favourite, despite the fact that Dino doesn't seem to fancy him.
Yeah, he's not a Dean Smith favourite, unfortunately. But his goal in the first leg against Leicester in that League Cup semi-final, what a finish.
Popped up with a few, hasn't he? Scored against Crewe, that's the League Cup.
Yeah,
scored
Barrow.
Against Barrow. But I think the one thing that Villa absolutely loved about him, fans loved about him, he put in an absolutely ferocious block or tackle on an Arsenal player when we beat them 1-0 when Trezeguet scored. And he got up, pumped his fists at an empty stadium to G up the empty stadium. And, he tried hard. Apart from them, you've got a few players who weren't great. James Bree didn't really get much of a chance. Jose Angel Crespo, we spoke about a bit on the centre-back one. Richie Delat, unfortunate to get injured maybe at the start of his Villa career, but never really did much.
No, that's pretty much the end of it.
Matt Loughton.
Yeah, I
wondered scorer of worldies.
Yeah, I wondered when he was getting mentioned, because you mentioned that worldies. Stoke.
Yep. Swansea as well, his first goal.
Yeah, I've personally, in terms of Loughton, he's evidently still playing in the Premier League for Burnley.
Mm-hmm.
along with another Villa player from that era who may or may not get mentioned in the centre midfielders.
I like Ashley Westwood. Yes,
it's from a personal perspective. They're in a team under Lambert that wasn't very good. Really, there's no real other way of putting it. They're in terms of they were signings from Sheffield United and Crewe, respectively. They weren't even the best players at Sheffield United or Crewe in terms of they weren't the best. Like Loughton wasn't the best defender at Sheffield United at the time. Westwood wasn't even the best centre midfielder at Crewe at the time, but kind of by on the cheap, really. Mm-hmm. I think you could say. I mean, in terms of did they add to Villa in terms of where they were a few years before they joined? No, they weren't the type of players who were going to get you back to the Euro days. But by then, we didn't quite realise it at the time, but those days had gone, in terms of, I mean, we're hoping to get back to them like a decade later. So I think they were partly a victim of circumstance, partly in terms of, if somebody says if you're playing in League One, League Two, do you want to go and play in the Premier League for Villa or another team like that? You're not going to turn around and say no, and you're going to give it the best shot you can. But, from a personal perspective, I just think because they are tarred by that brush of being in the Lambert team and, personally, because it was like slow water torture over a number of years, Lambert, I mean, I'm sure we could have a debate in another podcast about who was the worst manager in Villa kind of Premier League history. McLeish is going to be up there because that season was dreadful, but he was in for a year, he was out the door, kind of just about stayed up somehow. Lambert came in, it was real optimism with Lambert when he came in because at the time there was Rodgers and Lambert. Who's going to Liverpool? Who's going to Villa? In terms of that argument. And there's probably an argument at the time from some Liverpool fans who said, we would have taken Lambert. Things have kind of gone in different directions for those two in terms of their managerial history. And I think just because of that team, because in the grand scheme of things, by the end it was pretty dire.
Yeah.
Does kind of have that perception in my mind. And I think bringing it back full circle to them being at Burnley, even though Burnley have been in the Premier League for 6-7 years now, Villa have been in the Championship for a lot of that, there is kind of part of me, maybe kind of my bias or whatever other word you want to use, thinking that's about their level in Burnley really. And even though their level has been higher than us, for, as I said, a number of those years, I don't see that personally as a step up. I mean, to be honest, if you were going to tell me after they're leaving Villa they'd still be playing in the Premier League, I'd be surprised. So, yeah, that's where Loughton sits with me. Where does he sit with you?
I liked him. I thought he tried very hard. He was a very good player. Because, he sort of got frozen out towards that second season that he was at the Villa. Didn't play too much, from what I remember. I remember he had a very good pass on him. When we beat Sunderland 6-1, he played a magnificent diagonal ball to Andy Vyman to run onto and score. And there was talk at one point, speaking about both of them, Westwood and Loughton, there was talk of both of them being considered for England at the time, considering how not very well the Villa were doing.
Or how well England were doing under Roy Hodgson.
Well, yeah. I liked him. But, I don't think he's maybe quite as good as those other ones we mentioned. And another player, apart from Eric Leahy, who we spoke about as well before, you've got Leandro Bakuna. He played a lot of his time at right back. He bought as a midfielder. He wasn't great. I'm not putting him forward as my pick at all. Scored a few good goals, his free kick against Man City in that 3-2 win. Is he somebody that you consider?
A few crosses for Benteke. That was kind of the partnership. In terms of, does he make it into the ultimate 11? Not for me. I think kind of maybe attitude-wise by the end. I think he was maybe a bit too vocal about wanting out and...
Joining Real Madrid, wasn't he, or something?
Yeah, Champions League and, last time I checked, and I'm checking my notes, I don't think he did play for Real Madrid. So, I know, you probably would have jumped off at anybody kind of at that stage from when he was leaving. But, yeah, a player of an era, really, I would say, in terms of that. And, funny enough, it'd be interesting question whether I'd put him above Matt Lowen, actually.
I'd have Lowen above him, really, because Bakuna didn't make it to Real Madrid. Faubert at West Ham made it to Real Madrid. May never have played, but he made it to them.
He did. He lived the dream. Bakuna didn't. He's not living the dream of going in our Ultimate 11. Who is your pick for the right backs for 2010?
Oh, from that era. Oh, man. I'm going to stick with my guns, only because I sort of see Hutton as a bit more of a left-back. I know he went to right-back during the promotion-winning season because we brought Neil Taylor in. I'm going to go with El Mohammadi because I think he's helped create a couple of big moments for us. And reading bits of articles about him at the moment because he's still looking for a new club. He's based down south, looking for a new club, not quite ready to be a coach, though I don't think he'd turn down an opportunity if a good one came along. He speaks very highly about the Villa still at the moment. He's very much... And considering we all thought he was a Steve Bruce man, for him to be talking highly about the Villa and saying about what a great club it is and how he's good friends with Nassif Suarez, I think it's lovely to see. If that's not the sole reason he's going in, it is the fact that, overall, he's not a stinker of a signing. He's not the world's greatest signing either, but he was 100% effort all of the time for us. Set up those crucial goals that we mentioned and scored one against Newcastle as well. So for me, I'm going to go with Elmo. I don't think I expected to agree with it, but that's who I'll go with.
Well, that's an interesting one, that. Before recording, I would have gone for Hutton. You make a good point about the fact he played left-back for quite a few of the games for Villa. And it is a tricky one when you're comparing the two in terms of, the attacking output, the defensive output. The classic game I remember for Hutton was marking Traore out of the game in the playoff semi-final second leg against Middlesbrough.
Yeah.
When we got to the final under Bruce and lost to Fulham. So in terms of the defensive side of it, I am going Hutton. In terms of obviously the attacking side of it, the crossing and the finishes, you are going for El Ghazi. You are going for El Hamadi. You are going for El Hamadi.
We'll get there. Elmo, we go for Elmo.
It's been a long recording session, so we're struggling here. Like we're struggling to find right backs to fill this. So
there's a couple of needles in this haystack.
Yeah,
Take your time.
I'm clutching for them. I would stick with my gut. I'm gonna go Hutton.
Okay.
But either one of those, got that solid kind of place in the right back. So I'd probably say for the Twitter fans, Hutton and El Hamadi can go into the final four. But in terms of who's the final one, in terms of who is going into the right back in your Ultimate 11. So we've got Delaney, 90s pick, Luke Young, 2000s pick. You've got El Hamadi, 2010 picks. You can have Hutton if you want to change your mind in terms of that pick. Out of those, who's going into your right back Ultimate 11?
Ulysses de la Cruz.
Just to remind the listeners and ourselves, it's the best 11 we're trying to pick.
Do you know, it's hard. You make a good point about Hutton, and Hutton scored 2 great goals as well for us that will... One in particular goes down in Villa folklore, He was a cult hero, very much so. El Mohammadi flew under the radar. Luke Young, my heart says Luke Young. I love the man. I don't know what it is about him. just something about him. But Mark Delaney equally was a very good right back, and I think it comes down to those two for me because of the periods that they played in. They were quite successful teams in one way or another. You know, Delaney got to an FA Cup final with the Villa. Luke Young was in the Villa team that was pushing Europe a lot of the time. It's difficult, but I think I'm going to have to go back to my reasoning for centre-backs, and I'm going to let my head go with the decision here, and the fact that Mark Delaney played more games for the Villa than Luke Young did. I'm going to go with Mark Delaney. I think he was more of a Villa man in the end, really, and did a lot more over more seasons than Luke Young did for us.
A real tight one in terms of decisions. I mean, the fact there's less to pick from also makes it more difficult in a way than with the centre-backs where we had a few more to choose from. But in a remarkable run, we're 4 from 4 now, because I agree with you. I'm going Delaney in my ultimate 11 as well, and you forget how many games he played for Villa. It's more than what I thought before looking at the numbers. Quite nicely split as well in terms of longevity, because I think the general gut feeling would be good player, got injured, that was it. But no, there's a lot more kind of to it than meets the eye. You mentioned in terms of the cup final, team in 2000, also around about that time Villa were top of the league for a couple of weeks, in terms of different seasons. So that real kind of buzz about Villa being back, the John Gregory kind of era. And, in terms of, I think it's going to be going up nicely in terms of that Villa team from the turn of the decade compared to the O'Neill team, which was, the choice here between Young and Delaney. I mean, that's a podcast in itself we may pick up on, which team, in terms of those particular eras, or including the current era, is the best team. But the ultimate team is the one we're talking about now. I agree with you. I'm going Delaney.
Yeah, I remember him galloping down the wing, and he was very much galloping, wasn't he? He was a beanpole, really, but he was tough in the tackle. He was quick on the ball. He got a nice cross on him as well. Mate, I can't believe that we got 4 from 4, exactly the same. I'm really going to pull out like some left field left back next time, just to see whether you go with it again, or I might just listen to yours and deliberately disagree.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to see how far this streak continues, but we can't guarantee whether our ultimate 11s will match with each other. We can't guarantee if the fans will match us. Go onto the Twitter poll that will be uploaded at the same time with the podcast, have your votes. But one thing we can guarantee will continue is the talk of the Trinity podcast is going to be back with more content. We're going to keep you entertained over the international break. Got some great chats coming up. Who we got lined up for the next couple of weeks, Will?
We've got some awesome chats, as you say. We've already recorded our chat with Dave from the Irish Lions. So really looking forward to getting that out there for everybody. That was a good hour-long chat, wasn't it, with him? Some great stories, some great players discussed as well, not just Irish Villa players either. We've got the Latin Lions, Massimiliano, who we're going to get onto the show and have a chat with him. I'm sure we'll touch upon the likes of Benito Carbone with him, and we've got Scottish villains from the Cayman Islands as well. We've also got Villa and Proud representative coming onto the show. That may not be until a little bit later in the year because we've got Birmingham Pride coming up in September. So they're heavily involved with that. apart from that, I've got you on the show. You've got me.
Yep, we're here every week until until we disagree on a player for the Ultimate 11.
Mate,
Then
you're lucky you've agreed with that because there's 2 days left of this transfer window.
yeah, I mean, well,
I've got Johan Langer's people on the case.
Yeah, I mean, if I do get transferred out, it's been great being with you during this summer transfer window. I mean, if you were looking for reasons to listen to us next time, whether I'm still here, I mean, tuning in, see who's doing the intro. But that is for another day. We've got the international chats to keep you occupied during the next couple of weeks. In terms of Premier League chat and the continuation of the Ultimate 11, where we'll be talking about a left back next time around, listen out for that coming out before the Chelsea game. In terms of where we are now, hope you've enjoyed our Brentford review and the trip into the Ultimate 11 memory banks. Hope you enjoyed the fact that we've agreed with each other or not. We're going to give you the chance to disagree with us on the Twitter page. So thanks for listening, and we'll be with you again soon.
Nice one. Don't forget to like and hit that little subscribe button in the bottom left-hand corner for us. That is very much appreciated. And if you're not following us on Twitter, it's @TalkTrinity. That's @TalkTrinity. Give us a follow. We're nearly at 1,000. It's great to just have one person following us, to be honest, and that would be me. But
yeah, I don't follow.
Getting to that number in such a short amount of time is great. It makes you feel like Danny Ings or Alan Hutton scoring in front of the whole end, knowing that you've got this backing. No, nice one. Cheers, Tar. Thank you very much. Up the Villa.